proud members of the Fan First Sports Network.
He's gonna go! It's time, people, feel it!
Big Red Junkies.
Day by day! He gets better and better! If we die, we die!
Man, put a child in that! Put him in the aisle!
Bring that trophy back to Lincoln!
Beer twist. Okay.
Started off with a twist, not a crack.
Okay. We haven't gotten together in just a hot minute. We got together with Vegas. Me and Matt got together with Vegas like a week ago. That show's going to come out eventually, but it wasn't quite ready yet. So it's been a couple weeks since we've had anything out.
Yep.
A lot of shit has changed since the last time we got together, which was to talk about grading out Matt Rhule.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last show we put out.
Yeah.
I think my grade has changed significantly in the last 2 weeks, at least for the postseason so far.
How so?
Well, when you look at the needs coming out of the season, day after the bowl game, it's announced, or day after the regular season ends, Iowa game, it's announced Tony White's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody spent the good majority of that weekend throwing their hands up in the air and saying, we can't have anything nice. Here we go again. We're back to the rebuild, blah, 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 blah.
Which is really weird for Husker fans.
But it's also really weird because we all fucking knew he was leaving. Jesus Christ.
I agree. I think a lot of people thought that because the defense took a small step back, that maybe he wouldn't leave simply because the right job wasn't going to be available for him because of how he didn't really make any progress.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was kind of a thought in the back of my head as the season progressed, and it looked like, something's not driving quite the same as it did last year.
Most of the big voices around Husker football, even with everything that you just said, we're still saying, yeah, he's not coming back.
Yeah.
So, I get your point. I'm just saying most of the people that really know what the hell's going on, we're like, yeah, he's not coming back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, we aren't the people that really know what the hell's going on?
No, we don't. I don't. You guys might. I don't.
If you guys understand that we do not know what the hell we're doing, please hit the like button, subscribe, and come back to hear more about what we don't know.
We're professionals.
We're just here to talk shit. And like that one guy said in our YouTube comments on one of the last shows, he's like, I'm just here to listen to you guys rip on somebody and roast somebody. I told him, I said, maybe we'll roast you next show.
Here you go, buddy. But I think that every time we are faced with something this off-season cycle so far, Matt Rhule has exceeded expectations with hurdling that, in my opinion. We're recording on Monday night, February 3rd, and this last weekend, it's hilarious because we have this press conference for Matt Rhule happen on Saturday morning before the big junior day that happened.
Yep.
Which I heard went off without a hitch. Everything went really, really well. Made some really good impressions on some guys that were trying to flip in that class. And Matt Rhule almost seemed like that was not a normal Matt Rhule, haven't talked to you in a month press conference. He almost seemed borderline, like not annoyed, but just very businesslike. Like this wasn't, I'm going to wrap you in a hug and make you feel good about everything.
He had other stuff cooking.
Well, yeah. Well, and the press conference started off with the most pressing question at hand, which was, "Hey, we're now over a month now since you said we need major change, a complete overhaul
Yes.
of the special teams, and the only thing we've seen is you go get a punter and a long snapper."
Yeah.
So what about that special teams coordinator? And he basically was like, "Yeah, cool, we're working on it."
Yeah. We're doing some interviews.
We've interviewed some people. We heard the scheme wasn't the problem at all last year.
Phil Snow is doing a lot of, the facilitating in the interviews.
I'm in the room, but we'll
figure it out. Yeah. But and then 2 days later, here we go.
He knew what he was doing.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and that was the thing. And a lot of the radio guys this week were talking about that. It's like, or this morning we're talking about, I got on the radio ready to roast him today for not having any answers and talking about how this BS that it wasn't a scheme thing. Like you look at the fact that he hired Eckler the way that he did. And yeah, there's a lot of Nebraska people, especially if you're a little bit older, 20, 25, 26 plus, that might remember him from the Bo Pelini years. Because he kind of, he's a Nebraska boy, born and raised. He went to high school in Blair. But his parents still live in Fremont. Yeah, he's been down at Tennessee for the last 4 years. But when you look simply at the comment that Rhule made about how we've heard in the interviews that our scheme really wasn't the issue, it was just long snapping. It was like, what interviews were you hearing this from?
Yeah.
And I clearly didn't hire them.
It wasn't just about long snapping because we can't return anything either. So
We had, what was it, 10 or 11 blocked kicks or punts this year.
yeah.
Mike Eckler, in 4 years as Tennessee's special teams coordinator, has had 1 kick blocked.
Yeah.
1.
He's had some really good long snappers.
The
Apparently.
wild stat that I heard today was that this past season that they had it was like 1,100 punt return yards and had allowed less than 200.
Damn.
Holy fuck.
Is that good?
That's you spread that out over 13 games. That's a net positive of like an extra 80 yards.
I can't even fathom that as a Nebraska fan over the last 5, 6, 7
I'm
years.
still trying to figure out what positive yards is on a kick return.
They average with, and this was not like they had one superstar athlete. This is something that Steve Sipple made the comment about today. It's not like they had one superstar athlete that was returning all these and, having these giant returns, because they averaged 16.8 yards per punt return this year, which I don't think you tracked it for a couple of years. Did we have a 16-yard punt return? One for the whole season?
I've got it written down somewhere, but I couldn't tell you right now. But
That wasn't a punt block. You mean?
No, and this isn't just one guy who's like a superstar stud. This is 3 different dudes. This is replicable stuff. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me. And I think it's super exciting to look at the fact that he saw a need, he addressed the need, and it wasn't just like, oh, I went out and got this guy who's really promising from like Western Kentucky or some shit like that.
Yeah.
This is a big time SEC get.
Well, and with the last show, when we brought up when we were trying to rank, give a grade to Rhule, and we talked about, there's still the special teams coach that still needs to be hired, and there was a little consternation in the fact that it hadn't been named yet. But at the same time, I said, like, I'm not trying to minimize special teams, but at the same time, it's still just a special teams coordinator position.
I agree.
And one of the things that he said in the press conference was the special teams coordinator is not going to be a recruiting position. So even that told me that they were really taking their time to try to get this guy, because they didn't necessarily need that guy right now to get out on the road to recruit guys.
Yeah.
So if you're just going to bring him in, he's just going to do special teams. He doesn't need to waste time. I don't mean to waste time. That sounded bad, but he doesn't need to take time away and go out on the road and recruit. They could take their sweet
because
time.
I hear that he's a phenomenal recruiter too.
Well, but I mean, he'll be in the
personality.
room when the recruits come and visit, and obviously, and he's a real fiery guy, so he's going to get people jacked. But I mean, the fact that it's not going to be a recruiting position, I was okay with them doing their due diligence and hiring him when they hired him. It's not like they were going to go into spring without him. So
yeah,
whatever.
but it was really important for Rhule to be out on the road this last month, because he can't be out on the road again for recruiting until the actual season starts again.
Yeah.
Which is wild. But then it just, like, what I guess I'm getting at is every hurdle that we've seen, every hurdle that's come up, because all of a sudden the offensive line became this ultra scary, we don't have enough group coming out of, the bowl season. And we missed on some guys that I think everybody wanted. It would have been nice to go get another legitimate tackle, but you get
we got one.
a multi-year starter coming from Alabama.
Yeah.
Who spent time under Nick Saban, who played in the college football championship or college football semifinals last year, 2 years ago, 2023.
Yep.
Who played under another really good coach who had played in the finals the year before. So he's coming from a championship style program with elite level coaching and elite level talent around him. He knows how to talk to that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you add on Sunday, Rocco Spindler, who everybody thought, oh, well, he came and visited last Tuesday. They let him out the door without signing the papers. He's gone. Because that's been the way it's been for pretty much every other transfer guy that's come along other than Dane Key. And that didn't turn out to be the case. He went and toured some other places. He went to Michigan after this. He went to Virginia after this.
From what reports were, he didn't actually end up going to Michigan. He went to Indiana. I think it was after us, but then he canceled his trip to Michigan.
regardless,
Whatever, yeah.
he moved along and saw some other things and talked to some other people, ended up coming back to Nebraska for it.
Yeah.
It didn't even sound like we were the biggest NIL offer out there. But we had the most to offer from a facility standpoint, obviously. And, talking to Vegas, a Notre Dame guy, about Spindler, he made the comment that he actually thinks it has a lot more to do with Dana Holgorsen and the offense and Dylan Raiola being here, what he's going to get to play in. He thinks it's going to be a way more of a pro-style offense that's going to be able to show himself off for the NFL. And that's obviously his goal. He's only got the 1 year of eligibility left.
Yeah.
And when you look at it, the point Vegas made, and I'm pulling up the Pro Football Focus stuff, and it looks like he spent all of his time at right guard.
Yeah.
But he made the point that he's a super versatile dude who can play at the tackle and who can play center.
I think he's going to be playing guard. It's going to give us the benefit of, and again, Rhule mentioned this in the press conference about let's not pigeonhole certain players in certain spots just yet, but we need a center. So we had Justin Evans playing guard last year. He played a lot of center in the past. We could have him.
He came in and played really good at center 2 years ago.
He brought up Sam Sledge and one other guy that I'm completely brain farting on. Majacek was the other guy that he mentioned as a possible center. But I mean, if you're going to move Justin Evans into the center spot, then that opens up the guard position for Rocco, where, I think the tackle situation, I'm not going to say that it's great, but bringing in Pritchett from Bama, hopefully, I know we say this every stinking year, but Prohaska can actually be healthy. Corcoran coming back. We've got bodies, and Gunnar Gatula, who stepped in really well for us last year as a young kid and played a shit ton. I don't know that we necessarily are going to need Rocco at the tackle spot. I think we can keep him at guard and then just shift a couple of guys around, and I think we'll be okay.
I think it'll be interesting to see if they try and play, give him and Jenkins or Evans. Sorry, I can never remember which last name he kept. Justin Evans. Just go back to Justin Evans Jenkins. That's what I know he has. Justin Evans, I think you give them both a run at whatever, and you just let the best guy play.
Yeah.
At this point.
Well, that's what they'll do.
You have Pritchard, who everybody thinks for sure is going to be slotted in at left tackle. Supposedly it's his more natural position. But he spent the majority of this last year playing right tackle.
Yeah, right.
So you've got Gatula, you've got Corcoran, you got Prohaska, which all three are coming off injuries now. Prohaska is supposed to be 100% go by the start of spring. Corcoran's not going to be go until fall camp. And I guess Gatula's up in the air because they don't know for sure. Corcoran, I guess, had some sort of a hamstring issue
that just didn't heal.
That just didn't heal. So he had a surgery 2 or 3 weeks ago, it sounded like.
Yeah. He lists off a shit ton of guys. Latowski had a surgery. He
that
was
a
listing
shoulder.
Off so many guys that had
him and
different
Gatula
surgery.
had the same labrum shoulder, it sounded like. But again, like I said, we're bringing in, and you look at this, this is the big thing for me. When you look at the way Rhule built out the first couple transfer portal classes, the first round of hiring of his assistants, of his coordinators and his assistant coaches, he's completely evolved this from a fully developmental program, including the coaches, because they were all young, they were all his guys, they didn't have a ton of experience outside of his system, to now he's got NFL guys coming in to fill spots. He's got former coordinators taking assistant coaching spots. He's got major head coaching experience taking another coordinator spot. Now he's plucking from a college football playoff SEC team, their special teams coordinator, bringing him over. Mm-hmm. They're not bringing in, and I'm not even trying to call a Wake Forest, like a Jamal Banks from Wake Forest, like a mid-major program, but they're down there. They're the bottom of the Power 4 conference teams. We're talking about big time. Rocco Spindler played in the national championship. Yeah. We're talking about a
Georgia, Kentucky.
There's big shit. Yeah. Oklahoma, the best athlete in the back end of Oklahoma's defense.
11 of their 16 transfer portal guys they brought in are from Power 4 conferences.
It's wild.
So yeah, and also I haven't really dug. I'm working on digging deeper into how many years a lot of these guys have. And I know the offensive linemen that we've been talking about, they don't have a shit ton of time left, but a lot of these guys are also.
Pritchard's a 2-year guy. He's got 2 left.
But a lot of these guys have 3 years or stuff like that. So it's you talked about the developmental program. It doesn't necessarily have to be straight out of high school, which I know that's what Rhule really, really wants is the high school kids, and then use the transfer portal to supplement certain positions. But a good chunk of these guys are multiple year guys that are transferring in. And I know that with constant, basically 100% free agency every year, that doesn't really mean anything, but the potential is there for them to be able to be here for a long time.
Well, also you got to realize that bringing in somebody like Rocco Spindler, you're just giving the guys that you have coming in to play guard another year.
Mm-hmm.
And another year to learn with a guy who's been there and done it.
Absolutely.
So you're getting another aspect there of
that's one of the biggest points.
Some
right
experience from a guy who can talk to you about the biggest games, lead your line through some of the bigger games.
They know winning.
Keep them exactly. Keep their heads about them. Have an expectation for them. Like you're going to get a lot of added value from a guy like him off the field.
Well, and especially piggybacking off what you just said, as far as like you got guys like Canuck and Bricks and those types of guys that we've been drooling over of the potential of coming out of high school. They had this last year to be able to build their body up, to get stronger, to get better in the system and everything else. Even bringing in a Rocco Spindler is not only going to he can instill some of that knowledge that he has, but also allow them to have even another year of you'll be playing, but just maybe not yet. And then you can come in and still continue to develop, and it's just going to be so much more beneficial for all those guys.
But think about the leadership on that offensive line in that offensive line room. Last year, the old guys were Bryce Benhart, who had a complete roller coaster of a career.
Mm-hmm.
He was healthy the whole time and still just kind of sucked sometimes and was kind of good sometimes.
He was healthy the whole time and had numbers like he was injured half the time.
Yeah.
Ouch.
That's a great way to put it. But you think about that. Like that was a leadership guy who spent his whole career at Nebraska, which that's nothing to sniff at. But then your other major leader in that room is a guy who came from Arizona State. And yeah, he was good and he's a culture guy. He was a great guy, but you've got two like high-end level winner guys coming in with lots of experience. That's the other thing is these aren't guys that like flash in the pan for 1 year and so they got a shot at some NIL money while they're getting passed over somewhere else. Was Spindler maybe going to lose his starting job for sure this next year? Yeah, he was definitely going to not have anything guaranteed. It was going to be harder for him to find those snaps than it will be him walking in and basically being the number 1 or number 2 offensive lineman in the room.
Yeah, I don't know about that. He played in 12 or more games the last 3 seasons.
But he kind of lost his starting job this past year is what Vegas said, and really got it back because of injury.
I look at him. He has that as many snaps as he has, and he gave up 0 sacks last year. I think he was at least in the pole position to be able to be a starter next year. Who knows?
For sure.
Whatever. But
I'm just saying, like you look at the increased level of leadership in that room, like where they came from, the type of games that they've won. Bryce Benhart had no business trying to teach somebody how to be a winner in that room.
Well,
he didn't have the
most
ability.
of the Nebraska players couldn't.
But that's what I mean.
Let's be
though.
real. I mean,
these guys are coming in. It's kind of like when you hear like an NBA team that's just that one piece away, and they go out and get that weird older veteran, but he's been on like 3 championship teams over the last 10 years. He's a locker room guy that's able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of that when it comes to being able to talk about winning big football games.
I obviously I don't disagree, but I'm going to play a little devil's advocate because we've said that about a handful of other guys that we've brought in over the last handful of years that came from Alabama and Georgia. And yes, MJ Sherman played really well, but those other guys from Georgia didn't play very well. Jacob Hood's gone again,
but none of them are starters.
Arik Gilbert is who Arik Gilbert is. Yeah. But then we also had
I know who he is.
We also had 2 guys come in from Alabama during around that same time, Stephen Wynn and I'm brain farting on the other guy who really didn't do dick. Yeah. So
but they weren't multi-year starters at those places.
Again, I'm not disagreeing with you in the aspect of coming from winning culture programs, but it's also not a guarantee situation. Obviously,
right.
Nothing's a guarantee, but I'm just saying, sometimes that doesn't necessarily vibe the way that we want it to.
You're absolutely right.
It's a guarantee that I'm excited about all the stuff that's going on this year.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, it's a little bit wild, but outside of that, the only other major thing that's happened for Nebraska football since the last time we were all together you had a little story you wanted to share about the passing.
Yeah, we're watching the 1991 Kansas-Nebraska game right now where Calvin Jones set the all-time rushing record in a game where he didn't even start, by the way. I still don't know that we've even seen him do anything yet, and Kansas is going up and down the field and scoring like crazy. But
all time until like 2014 with
whenever that Roy
Haley
Jr.
Jr.
game.
Yeah.
No, it would have been before that because it was before we went into the Big Ten.
Okay.
So 2008, 9, something like that. Maybe 2010. But anyway, Calvin Jones passing away, that freaking sucked. Like he was always kind of one of my guys that I really liked. A guy that kind of got passed over as far as looked at as one of the better running backs, because everybody will say, obviously, Lawrence Phillips, Rozier, Amon Green, Amir Abdullah, those types of guys, but very rarely do people give Calvin Jones the credit that he deserved. I mean, I think he finished, he's currently at 5, 6, or 7 for all-time rushing yards as a running back. But unfortunately, the news of his passing away, I actually was at his letter of intent signing. It was the old Cleopatra's on 65th and Ames. And my family members owned that place, and we were in the basement, and it was just him and his family, handful of TV cameras, because he was a big-time recruit coming out of Central, and me and some of my relatives and my mom. And I've got a really good picture somewhere at my mom's house of me and Calvin Jones, and it was just kind of like hearing that news, man, really got me. It freaking sucks, and with whatever the reports might be as far as what ended up happening, it's just horrible. But
sad stuff for sure.
I love watching shit like this where we can actually enjoy watching one of the all-time greats at Nebraska run up and down the field on somebody. So,
been a while since we've seen that.
Yeah, no shit.
Ready to bring it back. And these offensive linemen we're bringing in this offseason are going to help with that. It's going to be a big thing. Any parting words? Any final thoughts?
I do want to ask what your guys' opinions on the news of the basically the spring game going away. Do you really care? Just they're doing like a fall sports preview on April 26th. They don't really know. They haven't really gave details as far as what that actually means.
Doesn't even know what it's going to be yet.
But it's nothing going to be on TV or anything like that. It's gonna go through all the sports, not just football. So. Whatever the hell's other sports go on during the fall, we don't really care about them, but
I mean, it'll suck to not have a game to go to in the springtime.
I mean, it makes sense why they're doing it. There's a handful of teams across the country that are starting to get rid of them. I just saw Rutgers announced when their spring game was going to happen. So there are still some big boy programs, if Rutgers is exactly that, but at least they're in a big boy conference that are still doing spring games. But I understand the reasoning behind it. There's a part of me that kind of thinks it stinks because that was one of those games that a lot of parents actually are able to get their kids to in Memorial Stadium because of the price of tickets. But at the same time,
Elijah talked about that
this
on,
is big
on
business.
the Average Joe show, was how his dad, when he was like 6, didn't want to spend the money to take him to a game he might not remember or whatever. But sure, I'll shell out the $5 or whatever. I think he said he got to do his drug-free pledge and go to the game for free or something back in the day.
Yeah.
But I kind of look at it from two different perspectives, right? Because right now we're in a place in college football where I don't think that everybody really understands where their leverage is when it comes to helping influence some of these decisions that both the NCAA are making and whoever's in charge of all this shit right now. It just feels like there's somebody in the back room that's making all these decisions and nobody really gets to have a say on it. I think that this might be a bit of a banding together by some of the bigger schools that would normally be putting out a big spring game product to really put some leverage out there on the NCAA, on the conferences, whatever it may be, to get this portal situation figured out.
They need contracts. That's what
whether it's to use for the contracts or anything, but the biggest, Rhule didn't talk about the injuries. Which is, I think. Well, no,
he didn't bring up Demetrius Bell.
I know he talked about when he was asked, he was prompted, but when he was asked why they aren't doing it, he went straight to competitive advantage.
Mm-hmm.
He went straight to, why am I going to bring these guys in to spring practice them up, wrap them up for 5 weeks, get them ready to go and in enough of a game shape and enough of a game form to go out and put on a good show for our fans, which is all that should be But we all know too, there's a spring portal window that opens right after I get done coaching this game, and sending these guys out there to get the fans all excited and showing them off, just so that some fucking yokel from Rutgers or where the fuck else is going to call them up and offer them $1 million the next day because they saw a great performance in the spring game.
That was what he brought up as far as
that's what I mean.
After last year's spring game, a bunch of his players got phone calls from other teams like, "Hey,
so that's
you looked really
thing.
good in the spring game. Come over and play with us."
That's my thing. Is Matt Rhule talks to the media, talks to his players, talks to the fans, talks to the AD, talks to 1890 through the media all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He's really, really good at it. And I don't know, maybe he said a couple months ago, stop reading between the lines, just take me at my word. Okay, but why'd you say that?
Yeah.
Why are you saying those things? Because if that's really the case, you're not going to just call it out because you're butthurt. Because you're sending a message to somebody to say, hey, look, we're going to take that $1 million fucking game off of Big Ten Network and take that revenue away from the conference because you guys can't figure your shit out.
Well, and one of the other things he brought up it's not necessarily something that's been talked about as far as taking away the spring game is the moneymaker that it is at Nebraska and how much money it makes them. Granted, it's $5-10 a ticket, and you're not putting 90,000 people in there, but you're putting 70.
It's also not the ticket that's making them money.
But then the food, I was getting there, yeah. But
they said last year's actual generated revenue was roughly 900 and some odd thousand.
Okay. So then they were like, well, where are they going to get? The thing is, of course, they'll always take that money. That's not what I'm trying to say.
Because they were going to scoff at $1 million?
But Nebraska can.
But if you lose a $1.5 million right tackle in the process, like I see it from both sides. I really do, because from a player safety standpoint, from all those things, I'm part of me goes, it's fucking football. Get out there and play the game.
It's no
How's
less
this any different
safe
than a practice?
Exactly. It's no less safe than that. It
isn't, but you're taking away that one other opportunity. But
they'd still have practice that day otherwise.
Yeah, but I don't know.
But that's my thing. I'm totally with you. They're going to run those same reps, whether it's on the practice field over in front of the Hawks or whether it's in the stadium in front of 70,000 people.
Why not run them in private where nobody's going to be watching them?
Okay, so
from the competitiveness standpoint, I agree with you. But at the same time, if you take away that portal window, and all of a sudden those kids aren't going to have that opportunity,
there's no competitive advantage
until after the season's over. Mm-hmm. I guarantee you'll see those spring games come right back and go right back on TV.
So I think BJ, you nailed it. It sucks that it's going away, and I'm excited to see it come back.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I mean, I understand it, but I really do think it's more about leverage than it is about the actual spring game and not wanting to play it. Because I think if it was all the same and that window was gone, sure, maybe we wouldn't see it in quite the same fashion because they've got a smaller roster. They're not going to be able to run out two basically full teams.
Yeah,
but at the same time, you can't tell me that they wouldn't be able to field something that was competitive and fun.
I thought if they were going to do anything, it may be like a half of the game. You don't have to do a full game. I know typically in the second half it was just a running clock, so it wasn't really a full game either way. But
you could also do something fun where you do a half of a game and then you do 7-on-7 drills.
Yeah,
or you do some sort of fun like Oklahoma drill and shit that the whole crowd gets to see.
Absolutely,
like that would all be super fun too. Something that's engaging with the fans is really what it's all about.
Well, and especially if you're going to incorporate all the other sports that also happen during the fall. Do some fun competitions with some other sports where, you're running a 40-yard dash and who's going to win, type stuff.
Kind of like the shit that they're doing with bringing the football players and do a slam dunk contest in Nebraska games.
Exactly.
Get Rocco Spiller out there to play volleyball. See what happens.
Well, I mean, bring out Harper Murray and see if she can catch a punt.
Or a deep throw, a deep pass. That'd be cool.
Say deep throw and a deep pass.
Whoa.
No, I said a deep throw.
Whoa,
Jesus, dude. It's a child.
I was like, what the fuck?
Good Lord.
Not repeat that.
Fucking hell.
Wow.
With that, like, subscribe, follow.
And go Eagles.
And this may be the most unbelievable night in Cornhusker football history.